Iraq has begun an offensive to retake the city of Fallujah from Daesh. Troops have entered a southern district of the city. An Iraqi military spokesman says the forces are dismantling roadside bombs as they advance. Their offensive aims to put an end to more than 2 years of Daesh control. Well, for more on that story, we can speak to Sohran Ahmari. He's an editorial writer at the Wall Street Journal. He's joining us from London. Sohran, good to speak to you. So, Fallujah is emblematic of the violence and conflict in Iraq ever since the US invasion. Why is it such a difficult city to get under control?
Well, you're right. I mean, after the U.S. invasion of Iraq, 2004 saw the most intense fighting in that war in Fallujah, and it's because it's a restive Sunni region that even Saddam Hussein had trouble keeping it under control, let alone the succession of crisis-ridden and dysfunctional Iraqi and occupation forces that have presided over Iraq since then. The real tragedy here, though, is that after 2004, the U.S. did make significant gains at the cost of 100 U.S. Marines' lives in stabilizing the city. But then, because of the hasty withdrawal, now you see it fall back into the clutches of Islamists, in this case of Daesh.
And Sohran, but do you think the security forces in Iraq have a chance? Isn't it more of a case of whack-a-mole with groups like Daesh? You take them out of Fallujah, they pop up somewhere else.
It is a bit of a game of whack-a-mole. It's very important that the Fallujah be stabilized because of its proximity to Baghdad. You had seen the longer the Fallujah occupation by Daesh was going on, the more attacks you would see recently in Baghdad, and there was an insecurity in terms of the central government of what that meant, so they have to do it, which is why they've prioritized it over Mosul, which is also, it was much bigger, but it's also further away. So we'll see. I mean, I think the underlying political dysfunction in Iraq, of which this military failure is a symptom, hasn't been resolved, which is, what is Iraq? Is it a multi-ethnic, multi-sectarian federal state that meets the needs of all of its components, or whether it's a Shiite state with pockets of Sunni and Kurdish resistance or separatism? That problem hasn't been resolved, and the military failures that you see are really a symptom of that deeper political crisis in Baghdad.
Absolutely.
And as long as that goes on, and especially if Sunnis don't feel safe and part of the system, they'll continue to have this sort of uprising and risk of radicalization and jihadists moving in.
Absolutely. Well, you've just touched on it there. And finally, Sohran, how important is the sectarian element here? So, we've got Shia militias involved in this offensive. How important is that? You've touched on it there briefly.
Yeah, well, it's huge because obviously it's good, for example, that there's some Sunni tribal buy-in to this operation. It's good that the Iraqi security forces counterterrorism division is leading the battle because it's the least sectarian unit of the Iraqi military, and it's very important that the Shiite militias stay at the outskirts of the city and not go in, because otherwise, you will have the same problem as you've had before, where these Shiite militias don't see themselves as a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. For them, counterterrorism and counterinsurgency means drilling Sunnis in the skull with power tools. So in other words, they would go do house-by-house reprisal killings and so forth. So it's very crucial that the Iraqi central government and its Western allies hold back the Shiite militias and make sure that whatever comes afterward is a situation where Sunnis feel like they're bought in, they're invested, they're respected, and there's not a situation of reprisal killings. Otherwise, you'll have a humanitarian catastrophe, and then on top of that, you'll set the stage for more instability. Maybe it'll take a different name than Daesh, but it'll come back as long as these people feel like they're not safe from Shiite militias.
Absolutely. Well, Sohran Ahmari from the Wall Street Journal there, thank you for joining us on TRT World.